Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're going to go beyond the headlines of, well, a really disturbing story.
Yeah, it's one that has shaken like the whole world of those family lifestyle influencers.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
those seemingly perfect families on YouTube.
Right,
Buckle up though, because this one takes a dark turn.
for sure.
So you guys have sent us a ton of information on this. Um, Police reports, body cam footage,
Wow.
journal entries, and even the family's own like social media posts. And we're going to try to piece it all together.
Sounds complicated.
Yeah,
And
it is. But I think what's really fascinating about this case is that that contrast between the polished, online persona
Right.
and the horrifying reality that was allegedly unfolding behind closed doors.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder that what we see online is often just like a carefully constructed narrative. When it
Exactly.
makes you wonder, like, how many other families might be hiding similar secrets?
Oh, totally.
Mhm.
And, it all started with this frantic 911 call from a neighbor.
Yeah. This 12-year-old boy, emaciated, covered in wounds, had escaped from a nearby house and was begging for help.
Oh, geez. That boy was Russell Frank,
Right.
one of the 6 children featured on the 8 Passengers YouTube channel.
Yeah.
The details of his condition were truly appalling.
Yeah.
Duct tape, like binding his wounds, sores treated with cayenne pepper and honey. It's hard to imagine.
It's almost medieval, right? What kind of logic is that? Like, why would anyone think cayenne pepper and honey would heal wounds? It's just a level of either ignorance or delusion, or I don't even know.
Absolutely. And this is where the case takes an even darker turn.
Okay.
Russell's escape, well, it led police to the home of Jody Hildebrandt,
Right.
a therapist and life coach closely associated with Ruby Frank.
The mom.
Yeah, the mother of the 8 passengers.
And inside that house, they found something that, like, further shattered the image of the perfect family.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Russell's 9-year-old sister, Eve, was discovered hiding in a closet.
Oh, wow.
Terrified and silent. It took officers hours to, like, coax her out. Jeez.
And even then, she was like visibly traumatized.
Just awful.
I mean, it makes you think about the level of fear these children must have been living with.
It's a classic example of the invisible scars, of emotional abuse.
Right.
Even without physical marks, the trauma can be profound.
Yeah.
It often manifests as anxiety, withdrawal, and difficulty trusting others.
That's heartbreaking. And all of this was happening while Ruby Frank was projecting this image of a happy, like, wholesome Mormon mother online, right?
Yeah.
Her YouTube channel was filled with cheerful family vlogs showcasing their seemingly idyllic life.
Right. Right.
How could someone capable of such cruelty also present like such a carefully curated facade to the world?
It speaks to the power of compartmentalization, I think.
Yeah.
And also to the potential for, anyone to construct a carefully edited version of reality online.
And then there's Kevin Frank.
The husband?
Yeah, Ruby's husband and the father of these 6 children.
Right.
He claims he was separated from Ruby.
Yeah, and had no knowledge of the alleged abuse. I
Yeah.
mean, is it possible he was completely in the dark about what was happening in his own home?
I mean, that's one of the biggest questions surrounding this case.
Yeah.
Kevin's claims of ignorance raised serious concerns about his role
Right.
and whether he was, willfully blind to the suffering of his children,
Yeah.
or like if he truly was unaware. I mean, what does that say about the family dynamics
Right.
and his own isolation within that system?
It's almost too much to process. You have this seemingly normal family, broadcasting their lives online, and behind the scenes, there's this alleged web of abuse and manipulation.
Right.
And then, like, to make things even more complicated,
Oh, yeah.
you have Jody Hildebrandt's influence looming over everything. What do we actually know about this woman and her connections program?
Well, from what we can gather, Jody presented herself as like a family dynamics expert,
No.
aligning her teachings with LDS principles.
Okay.
She offered advice on relationships, discipline, and achieving a sense of unity within families.
Mm.
However, there are claims that her methods were controlling and manipulative,
Okay.
using guilt and shame to, enforce a rigid hierarchy within the family structure.
And it's not just about the family dynamics, is it? Jody made some pretty outlandish claims about her abilities.
Oh, like what?
Walking on water, seeing shadow figures, experiencing demonic possession.
Oh.
How could Ruby, a seemingly rational person, fall under the sway of someone promoting these kinds of beliefs?
Well, that's where the psychology of manipulation gets really interesting.
Yeah.
People who are vulnerable, seeking answers or a sense of belonging, can be particularly susceptible to these kinds of,
Yeah.
charismatic figures.
Right.
And then add in like religious belief, and it creates a powerful cocktail for potential exploitation.
So you have this charismatic figure in Jody, a vulnerable follower in Ruby, and a seemingly oblivious husband in Kevin.
Right.
It seems like the perfect storm for something terrible to happen.
And unfortunately, that's exactly what appears to have transpired. But before we, delve into the specifics of the alleged abuse, let's take a closer look at how Jody's influence began to manifest in Ruby's actions and online content.
Okay, yeah, because that's one of the things that really stood out to me in the research. It's
Yeah.
like you can trace the progression of Jody's influence through the evolution of Ruby's YouTube channel.
Okay.
Like in the beginning, it was all happy family vlogs.
Right.
But over time, the content took on this darker, more authoritarian tone.
Huh.
It's almost as if Jody's ideology was slowly, like, seeping into every aspect of Ruby's life and broadcasting it to the world.
And that's what makes this case so fascinating
Yeah.
and so disturbing, because it raises questions about the responsibility of online platforms,
Yeah.
the potential for manipulation within, influencer culture, and the very nature of truth and authenticity in the digital age.
Right.
It forces us to confront this uncomfortable reality
Yeah.
that what we see online is often a carefully constructed facade, and that even the most seemingly perfect families can be hiding dark secrets.
Yeah, it's like watching a train wreck in slow motion,
Right.
You see these subtle shifts in Ruby's content, these glimpses of Jody's ideology kind of creeping in.
Yeah.
And you can't help but wonder if anyone watching could have intervened.
Especially when you consider that there were, people raising concerns in the comments sections of Ruby's videos.
Oh, really?
Yeah, people were noticing the changes in the children's behavior, the increasingly harsh punishments,
Mm-hmm.
the overall, shift in the family dynamic.
It raises the question of whether we as a society have become too, desensitized to the signs of abuse.
Mm.
Or maybe we're just too quick to dismiss concerns as, oversensitivity or judging someone else's parenting style.
It's like we've been conditioned to accept these curated online personas as, reality, and to trust the narratives that influencers present.
And that blind trust can have devastating consequences,
Yeah.
as we've seen in this case. So let's talk about the specific allegations of abuse,
Okay.
because the details are honestly horrifying. We're not just talking about strict discipline here.
Right.
This is alleged torture.
Right. We have Ruby's own journals.
Oh, wow.
Where she describes, locking the children in closets for days, forcing them to sleep on the floor without blankets, withholding food as punishment.
And she justified all of this by claiming that Russell and Eve in particular were full of evil,
Right.
and that these harsh punishments were necessary to drive out the demons.
It's a chilling example of how distorted beliefs,
Yeah.
fueled by a charismatic manipulator like Jody, can lead to horrific acts of cruelty.
One detail that really stuck with me was the incident where Ruby shaved Eve's head
Oh my God.
as punishment for dropping some boxes she was carrying.
It's such a dehumanizing act.
Yeah,
Intended to humiliate and break a child's spirit.
right.
It's about power and control, not discipline.
And it's important to understand the psychological impact of this kind of abuse on a child.
Right.
It's not just about the physical pain.
Right.
It's about the erosion of self-worth, the constant fear and anxiety,
Right.
the feeling of being completely powerless.
Exactly. Children who are subjected to this kind of abuse often develop coping mechanisms that
Yeah.
can be misinterpreted by outsiders.
Right.
They might become withdrawn, overly compliant, or even engage in, self-harm.
Mm.
It's a desperate attempt to survive in an environment where they have no control.
Which brings us to the Arizona plan.
Okay.
It seems like things were already bad, but Ruby and Jody were plotting to, escalate the abuse even further.
From what we can tell, they were searching for a remote piece of land in Arizona,
Uh-huh.
where they planned to move the children and implement even more extreme treatment methods.
It's like they were creating their own little cult,
Yeah.
isolated from the outside world,
Right.
where they could exert complete control over the children.
And it's terrifying to think what might have happened if Russell hadn't escaped when he did.
His bravery is truly remarkable. Yeah.
A 12-year-old boy, emaciated and traumatized,
Right.
managed to, flee a dangerous situation and seek help,
Right.
ultimately bringing this whole nightmare to light.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of situations, there is always hope.
Yeah.
And that sometimes it takes the courage of one person to break the cycle of abuse.
But let's not forget that there are still, so many unanswered questions in this case.
Right, like, well,
Like, what was Kevin's actual level of awareness?
mhm.
Was he willfully blind to the abuse,
Right, but
or was he genuinely deceived by Ruby and Jody?
I think it's important to approach that question with nuance.
Okay,
It's possible that Kevin was manipulated and controlled by Jody just as effectively as Ruby was.
right.
He describes being isolated, guilt-tripped,
Yeah.
and even subjected to, like, bizarre occurrences in the house.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
could have been designed to, instill fear and compliance.
He mentioned things like lights turning on and off,
Oh.
sounds of people walking in the walls.
Even objects, like, flying around.
It sounds almost paranormal,
Right.
but it could also be explained by psychological manipulation tactics,
Right.
sleep deprivation,
Yeah.
gaslighting,
Uh-huh.
and the creation of like a heightened sense of anxiety
Right.
could all contribute to these kinds of experiences.
So it's possible that Kevin was a victim of Jody's manipulation as well?
It's certainly a possibility that warrants further investigation.
Okay.
But even if he was genuinely deceived, there's still the question of responsibility.
Right.
Was he too quick to dismiss the concerns of others?
Yeah.
Did he prioritize his own comfort over the well-being of his children?
Those are tough questions.
They are.
And ultimately, it'll be up to the legal system to determine the extent of his accountability.
But regardless of the legal outcome, this case raises important questions about the dynamics of abuse within families,
Right.
the role of bystanders,
Mm-hmm.
and the importance of, recognizing the signs of manipulation and control.
And it highlights the dangers of blindly trusting online personas,
Yeah.
especially when those personas are being, like, carefully crafted for profit and influence.
Because at the end of the day, it's the children who suffer the most.
Yeah.
Their childhoods have been stolen, their trust shattered, their sense of safety and security irrevocably damaged.
And the healing process for them will be long and arduous.
Yeah.
They'll need extensive therapy, support,
Right.
and above all, a safe and loving environment where they can finally begin to rebuild their lives.
And hopefully by sharing their story and analyzing the complexities of this case,
Right.
we can learn from these tragic mistakes
Yeah.
and work towards creating a world where children are protected from such horrific abuse.
Because it's not enough to simply be shocked and outraged by these stories.
Right.
We need to take action. We need to, like, educate ourselves about the signs of abuse, support organizations that work to protect children, and most importantly, be willing to speak up when we see something wrong.
Silence is complicity. And in a world where abuse can thrive behind closed doors and carefully curated online facades, we all have a responsibility to be vigilant, to be informed, and to be a voice for those who cannot speak for themselves.
And speaking of speaking up, there's another layer to this whole story that I think is important to unpack.
Okay, what's that?
It's the financial aspect of the abuse. It wasn't just emotional and physical.
Right.
It was financial too.
Yeah, that's a crucial aspect that often gets overlooked in these kinds of cases.
Yeah.
The exploitation wasn't just confined to the children's bodies and minds,
Right.
It extended to their financial security as well.
So from the documents you shared, we know that Ruby drained the family's bank accounts,
Really?
including the kids' college funds.
Oh, wow.
We're talking about, like, a staggering $85,000.
Jeez.
Where did all that money go?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some of it likely went towards, funding that planned move to Arizona.
Right.
But there's a strong suspicion that a significant portion went directly to Jody or her connections program.
It's mind-boggling to think that Ruby would prioritize this, like, scheme over her own children's financial well-being. Like,
Right.
speaks to the level of, I don't know, indoctrination and manipulation that must have been at play.
Absolutely. Jody seems to have held this, powerful sway over Ruby, convincing her that this was all for the, greater good, even at the expense of her family's financial security.
And get this, the bag containing the $85,000 vanished from Jody's house.
Oh, really?
Just disappeared. Did she hide it? Spend it? I mean, we may never know the full story.
It adds another layer of intrigue to this already complex case, right?
Yeah.
It raises questions about potential accomplices and whether Jody had a network of enablers helping her.
And in the middle of all of this is Kevin, who went from being, like, completely in the dark
Yeah.
to discovering the horrific truth about his children
Right.
and his wife cleaning out their bank accounts.
So,
It's a whirlwind of betrayal and shock.
Kevin's journey throughout this ordeal is truly heartbreaking. He went from, a seemingly oblivious husband
Yeah.
to a betrayed spouse
Right.
and a devastated father,
Yeah.
all in a matter of days. It really underscores the ripple effect of abuse.
Right.
It doesn't just impact the direct victims, it, shatters the entire family system.
It's a lot to process. He's now left to pick up the pieces, fight for
Mm-hmm.
custody of his children, and try to rebuild their lives. It's a daunting task, but thankfully he seems determined to do right by his kids.
Yeah, his commitment to his children is commendable.
Yeah.
He's facing an incredibly difficult road ahead,
Uh-huh.
but his determination to be a present and supportive father offers a um, glimmer of hope in this otherwise devastating story.
So let's talk about the legal aftermath.
Okay.
Both Ruby and Jody were ultimately charged with 6 felony counts of child abuse.
Yeah, the charges reflect the severity of the alleged abuse
Yeah.
and the lasting impact it has had on the children.
Right.
It sends a clear message that society will not tolerate this kind of behavior, and those who harm children will be held accountable.
So rather than face a trial, they both pleaded guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse
Oh, wow.
and received the same sentence,
Okay.
between 1 and 15 years in prison for each count, to be served consecutively.
Okay, so that means they could potentially spend up to 60 years behind bars,
Right.
which is a significant amount of time considering the nature of their crimes.
It's a just outcome, in my opinion, holding them accountable for their actions
Right.
and ensuring that they cannot harm other children.
Yeah, the sentencing serves as a powerful deterrent, demonstrating that society takes child abuse seriously and will pursue justice for the victims.
And as for the children, they were taken into the custody of, Child Protective Services
Right.
and placed in foster care.
Hopefully they will receive the therapy and support they need to heal and rebuild their lives.
Yeah, their recovery will be a long and complex process,
It will.
requiring patience, understanding, and a trauma-informed approach. Hopefully they will find loving and supportive homes
Yeah.
where they can finally feel safe and secure.
And let's not forget about the older Frank daughters, Sherry and Abby.
Right.
They were fortunate enough to, escape the alleged abuse.
Right.
But they're undoubtedly grappling with the trauma of their family's implosion.
Yeah, they are showing incredible strength and resilience in the face of adversity.
They are.
Sherry's decision to write a book about her experiences is a testament to her courage
Yeah.
and her desire to shed light on the, dark side of her family's story.
Her voice will be an important one,
Yeah.
offering insights into the dynamics of abuse and providing hope for other survivors.
And Abby's request for privacy for her younger siblings is, understandable and commendable.
Good answer.
They deserve the space and time to heal without the added pressure of public scrutiny.
Right.
This case has left an undeniable mark on everyone involved.
It has.
It's exposed the dark underbelly of influencer culture and the devastating consequences of unchecked power and manipulation.
It's a story that continues to resonate,
It does.
raising important questions about online safety, child protection,
Right.
and the responsibility we all share in safeguarding the well-being of children.
It's a stark reminder that we can't simply be like passive consumers of online content.
Right.
We need to be critical thinkers, questioning the narratives we're presented with and recognizing the potential for manipulation, especially within influencer culture.
Absolutely.
And we need to be more aware of the signs of abuse, both online and offline.
Yeah.
We need to educate ourselves, support organizations that protect children,
Right.
and most importantly, be willing to speak up when we see something wrong.
Because silence allows abuse to thrive.
Right.
By, shining a light on these difficult topics, we can empower ourselves and others to create a safer world for all children.
This deep dive has been a heavy one, but I hope it's sparked some important conversations for you. If there's one thing to take away from this story,
Yeah.
it's that we all have a role to play in protecting children.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was great to be here.
Until next time.